Because if you can then say, okay, this is all for luxury, you're going to have a great time over here. Sure, you're paying a little bit more, but that's what it is. It's a beach apartment, and it's just the best. So you're exactly right in the sense that for a short-term rental, you can squeeze a little bit more money out of it. But then the other thing, and this is again, why you and I most likely invest in residential, is because it's more consistent. Sure, it might be a little bit more boring and the cash flow isn't as high, but it's something that's predictable. And you don't have that many hassles of, every single month, I'm scrambling to hit my mortgage or hit this amount of cash flow. You don't have to worry about that for the most part because it's already, handled. So there's a little bit of a mindset switch there.
Hey guys, let me tell you about Folio Lands. We landlords fear complaining tenants, fast turnover, bad reviews and negative ROI. Over the years I realized it happens because we lack a system. They streamline maintenance and repair requests by inviting our co-investors and repairmen into the app to foster smooth communications between us, the tenants and the suppliers. Head over to FolioLens.com if you hate time-consuming admin tasks like tracking your property revenues, expenses, and due dates. So sign up for their newsletter at FolioLens.com and start managing your rental properties from anywhere in the world. Hey, welcome to the Ideal Investor Show. This is Axel, and we are welcoming our guest for today, Sean. So welcome, Sean.
Doctor, thank you so much. Absolute pleasure to be on.
Yeah, and you can call me Axel. You don't have to call me Doctor. I know that I deserve it and I earned it, but you're good. Let's be Sean and Axel for today. So, Sean, real quick, tell us a little bit what you do, where you come from.
Yeah, man. So I run a global photography company called Momentum 360. So we roughly have about 1,500 photographers on a global scale. We have coverage all over the United States and in about 10 to 15 countries all over the world. So it's a really interesting platform because we have about 5 core services: virtual tours, photography, videography, virtual staging, and 3D rendering. And as you can imagine, with COVID, now that it's technically over in the United States, we're still going through some cases. It's really never over, is it? But
yeah, exactly.
It's a precedent now, the fact that this virtual technology is it's recognized as something of a necessity, and a lot of small businesses and property management companies definitely need this service. So I'd be lying if I said that we weren't very, very busy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think there is, like with everything that goes on, there are winners and losers, and anybody I guess one of the biggest winners I could point to is probably something like Zoom, right? Like, I mean, you and I, maybe you did. I didn't. I was not smart enough to buy stock in Zoom, but no, I mean, there is definitely when stuff changes. And I honestly believe, I don't know what your opinion is, but certain things I believe are not going to come back when people say they want to go back to normal. I think that was never really true. We as human beings don't typically go really back to any normal. We're constantly evolving, and normal kind of keeps adjusting to the circumstances. So a little bit for our audience, as you know, we are doing real estate investing, and we want to help people to understand things about real estate investing. And the thing that we have traditionally done is residential. And what we are now also starting to get into an offer for cash flow optimization is short term. And I wanted to ask you, as an expert for photography and basically visualizations, if you can tell us a little bit what basically trigger an emotion or trigger a reaction to what they see in the picture, because a lot of what I see is when the imagery, the pictures, whether it's for a residential property that somebody wants to sell or for a short-term rental where the pictures end up on Airbnb or VRBO, it seems like the likelihood that a tenant likes it or the likelihood that a buyer likes the property more or less or makes the decision. So can you talk a little bit about how that works? Why are we intrigued with some and basically not so much with others, to be careful?
Well, it's all about telling a story, right? I mean, I've been doing photography now for about 5 years, and the biggest thing that I can see whenever I'm dealing with, a single family home, a huge apartment complex, complex that's roughly 500,000 square feet. We were just in the Netherlands not too long ago working with PRA Health Sciences, a Forbes 500 company. a billion-dollar company. They're on the S&P 500. You can buy them right now. And I got to tell you, it's one of these things, Axel, where you have to nail down the brand. You have to know the brand. You have to know the person. So as large as PRA Health Science is, my job was to figure out, okay, what do they really stand for? And what do we want to represent? What do we want to create that's going to emulate that brand? That's going to just pour out that vision when we were working with them. And then it goes all the way as small as working with a single real estate agent, doing their photos for, a normal 3-bed, 2.5 bath. That's like, 300,000 square feet. Just as important, because we need to make sure that all of their content that they're putting out on social media, Google My Business, and then all their other listings is consistent with the level of quality that they're going to be putting out. Because I can't tell you how many times, man, I've gotten calls from other, photographers and other, companies and other, clients. And they're like, hey, I was on your competitor's website and we went with them and I saw some really good stuff on the website, but when they actually shot and we got the final images, it was a piece of crap. Like, it really did not emulate at all what we were looking for. So to have a good story is really the main key, right? So for me, I invest in single family homes below the median average. So in Philadelphia, that's roughly about 220,000, right? And the biggest thing, which, I've been in the industry for a long time now, I've seen thousands of houses, thousands of listings, is you need to have that story, like I said. So for instance, the houses that I bought, they all had glamorous pictures. They really captured me. They're like, oh my God, this is incredible, right? Because my strategy is a little bit different. And, it's just what I think is, for me, the best option right now in buying properties that were just newly renovated, which I'm not getting as much equity in for sure, but I'm saving money on the repairs. So there's a lot less likelihood that I'm going to be going through repairs. I understand people that are going to be buying lots and buying, shells that are like $70,000 and rehabbing them. It's just not the route that I want to take with my life right now. I'd much rather have something that's more turnkey, put some nice tenants in there that are going to pay every single month at top dollar, and that's it. Because as you and I know, let's just say there's some huge real estate crash tomorrow, our tenants are going to be paying the exact same, right? They're not going to be dipping down. Like, it's not like, oh, I see the house for the most part is worth $75,000 less. I'm not going to be paying what I'm paying now. It just doesn't happen. We have a lease already and we have, precautions already locked in. So, and that's what, some of my tenants, they checked out the property, like, oh my God, like I put it on Facebook Marketplace and they're like, yeah, this, house is amazing. It's beautiful. So that's how I ultimately got them. But it's all the same, man. It's just telling a story. And if you can capture that story in your photos, in your virtual tour, then, what can I say? You're on the right path to selling it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's basically, if you look into, and the audience members who are new to the show, if you look into the materials and the strategies that we are suggesting, they're totally aligned with what you just described, Sean. We are suggesting residential real estate investments, so single family to up to fourplex, because that's the most supported by government. It's the best from a tax perspective. It has the biggest market. Then pretty much anybody who might be potentially wanting to own a house, wanting to move into a house, like all of those people are your potential buyers and clients. The statement that people oftentimes make about real estate is not really a fluid or very easily liquid asset is kind of true. But that's why I always say you want to stay in the biggest market you can, in the sense, because biggest meaning like you don't just have investors as potential buyers if you ever really needed to, but you also have all kinds of regular people. And you said if there is a crash in the equity or the valuation, but if you have a pandemic where everybody is suddenly locked down, you still make your rent payment. Right. And so one thing I wanted to ask, since you described it, the properties that you acquired for yourself, are they all within like driving distance of where you live or reasonably close, or are they further away?
Yeah. So I'm actually from Philadelphia, the fighting city, the city of brotherly love. And the property I'm in right now is actually the first property I ever bought. It is a new construction place in a very, very, what am I looking for? Rehabilitated area, right? Okay. So I get the 10-year tax abatement, which if you guys know what that is, the tax abatement is essentially saying, okay, if your monthly payment normally is about $300 a month, right? You're now taking that abatement and it's passing it off for 10 years. So now that $300 a month is actually going to be $300 a year, which is very great. Yeah, just another, incentive for investors to come in and buy, right? So that's number one. Number two is I actually have a builder's warranty, a 1-year builder's warranty. So I bought this property in April of this year. I'm going to then get that extension all the way to April of 2022. So God forbid if this roof, which this is the third floor, the roof is actually right over there. God forbid if it was to cave in, and hopefully I'm not there at the time. I could then talk to my people and say, listen, roof caved in. Let's get it fixed. And it's under the warranty, which is fantastic, because then if it wasn't, I would need to go through insurance and blah, blah, blah. There's a whole big thing there. But yeah, they're all in driving distance. They're all in walking distance. I actually have a electric scooter downstairs that's charging. So I like to go in the office, charge the scooter. And then I actually have a property management company as well. But I have great tenants. So if I ever want to go into the house and just like surprise them with whatever, or just check in and, shoot the stuff, so to speak, I'll do that. But
yeah, that's cool. And I mean, the reason I asked the question is sometimes if somebody in the audience is listening to us and saying, okay, well, that sounds kind of cool, and I would like to have, the income regardless how the economy is developing, the tenants paying off the mortgage, ultimately are going to own these properties. And I've actually proposed and maybe to some extent coined this term time freedom point, which the time freedom point as a definition is just you pick a number. You say, okay, what I need to live my life the way I want to live it, let's just say, to grab a number, requires $5,000 a month, right? Then it becomes a mathematical equation to say, okay, well, if I get X amount of cash flow out of my property, how many of those do I need, and how do they need to evolve over time until I reach $5,000 a month? Or the equivalent, if it takes a long time. I always say, even in the worst cases, anywhere between 8 to 10 years, you're there, even if you have a pretty crazy number, right?
Yeah.
When you are in the lucky situation, like you live somewhere where the ratio between the price that you pay for the house and the rent that you can make is still good, which I call well performing. But you can also be in a situation where I am here in the San Diego area, where that average that median that you were talking about is about 700,000. So anything that I would consider to be well performing is between 0.8% and 1% of the purchase price as the monthly rent. Well, in that case, it would basically mean I would have to get anywhere between close to 6,000 to 7,000 a month. Well, how likely is it that somebody for a reasonably regular house would pay that as rent? We have kind of like a similar approach, just with a little twist, and that is that we basically, our strategy has this OOS for out of state in front of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
so.
Sure.
That's just to give a little bit of a similarity to that. Now, are you also supporting short-term rental operators?
So that's a great question. So I'm actually, one of my goals for the end of this year, I'm going to be buying one more property, FHA, which is essentially just for your audience, of putting 3.5% down. This is normally a program where if you have bad credit and you have low income, you could take advantage of. But smart investors like you and I will take advantage of this to get properties very, very cheap out of pocket, if any. And then we will then move into that property and then rent it out. So I will essentially do what I'm doing right now. I will just move to a better part of Philadelphia. And it's nice because the property that I bought, that's my second house, and the first house that I'm living in right now, it's the third property is kind of between those two. So if I, God forbid, needed to go to them in an emergency, it wouldn't be too far. It'd actually be split in the middle, which is pretty nice.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm going to be doing at the end of the year. And then Q1 of next year, I'm actually looking to get a place in Puerto Rico. So we're going to switch the mindset a little bit and then get into the Airbnb mentality where in the winter, we're going to be renting out to people that want to go down to Puerto Rico and to San Juan, Condado, whatever, and wherever we decide to get this property, specifically Atwood Town. And then during the summer, we're probably going to be renting out to the Puerto Rican natives who actually live down there 24/7, who are citizens and want to say, hey, for the weekend, let's, go and get a weekend on the beach and just have a good time. So that's a different can of worms. And I'll tell you why. So there's two main differences I've seen in the Puerto Rican markets from like the US markets. Number one is obviously a lot of people are trying to take advantage of it for tax incentives, right? So what we're trying to do right now, my company is actually technically own this under the Puerto Rican government, right? So we get the tax benefits. So what we're doing right now is we're actually applying for an LLC in Puerto Rico to ensure that there's no, hiccups, that we're a legitimate business down there. The problem is, I believe we're going to have to buy the property and then have it for like 6 months or 8 months or a year. And then we can say, okay, business. And then we could also classify my business partner, Mac, and myself as residents of Puerto Rico, which is pretty cool. That's number one. And then number two, what we're seeing is the interest rates are kind of through the roof, as you can imagine, because it being, an island and a lot of people are trying to get down there. And quite frankly, it's more desirable down there for cash, obviously, but specifically down there because it's more in demand and people, quite frankly, they have the cash to buy that. So the financing options aren't as lucrative and comprehensive as they are in the United States with all these different options and loans. So that's the game plan. If we can get down to Puerto Rico, Q1, it'll be fantastic because that'll have a place down there, and then I can continue to just diversify and go from there.
Yeah, and I mean, I know that there are many what Europeans, me coming from Germany originally, we always say there are 1,000 ways to get to Rome, or 1,000 roads that lead to Rome. So if you like some help or at least some ideas on solving that financing issue, let me know after we're finished with the show today, and I'm happy to give some input on that. What I would like to come back to is, you mentioned earlier the storytelling component. And for our audience, I want to mention really quick, why are we even looking into short-term rental? And I would assume you have a similar story in the context of the why. Is that typically if you get a good occupancy, like I would say between 60 and let's say 90%, meaning like 60 to 90% of a month or a year, your property is occupied, right? So when you think about taking pictures, but maybe also even already on the design end to say, what would be things where you think they would be important to ultimately end up on the pictures for somebody to be attracted to book your property in Puerto Rico, or for that matter, any place where somebody says, I have a property, I have been renting it long term, but now I'm looking at how could I make it attractive to get more cash flow out of it. So what would it take for the story to be told, both on the design of the furnishings and then the picture taking?
This is a great question. This actually gets me excited. As you were asking it, I was like, oh, I can't wait to answer this. So there's a lot of different things. So you have to think, okay, if I'm an American and I'm buying a property in Puerto Rico, what do other Americans and other people down in PR want to see as a short-term rental, as a vacation, right? They want to see luxury. They want to see comfortability. They want to see amenities. So for instance, us investing into an apartment building is very, very lucrative for a lot of different reasons. Sure, we're going to have to pay the FHA or FOA fees, but that's fine. I don't care about that. What you need to do is express, like you said, the story. So if you have a community pool, if you have a jacuzzi, if you have a space where your apartment complex is hovering around a boatload of different restaurants and a boatload of different bars, that is what people want to see. And then, oh my God, if you're on the beach, forget about it. I mean, all you have to do is go open your balcony and just take a couple flicks with your iPhone, you'll be fine. But that goes a long way, because if you can then say, okay, this is all for luxury, you're going to have a great time over here. Sure, you're paying a little bit more, but that's what it is. It's a beach apartment on Puerto Rico's, wherever you are. And it's just the best. So you're exactly right in the sense that for a short-term rental, you can squeeze a little bit more money out of it than a normal, single family home, for instance. But then the other thing, and this is like, again, why you and I most likely invest in residential, is because it's more consistent. Sure, it might be a little bit more boring and the cash flow isn't as high, but it's something that's predictable. And you don't have that many hassles of, every single month, I'm scrambling to hit my mortgage or hit this amount of cash flow. You don't have to worry about that for the most part because it's already, handled. So there's a little bit of a mindset switch there.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. And I mean, the thing about it is, I've oftentimes said, if you have a property and you want to first start out and you can prove that the property works, meaning like it gives you at least a little bit of cash flow, even though you have a mortgage on it, you have insurance on it, property tax on it, and you still have cash flow, and then take the step to say, okay, now I put the cash flow aside for a while, so now I can actually make the investment for the furnishings, then that way back is always open to you. If for some strange reason the short-term rental wouldn't work, you could always come back and say, okay, well then I can either rent it furnished or I can rent it unfurnished, just as I did before. And I already know it covers my cost and still leaves me a little bit of cash flow, which from a risk mitigation, from an investor perspective, if we say we want to educate and help people to get into the investor mindset and into the creative mindset, that is just an additional safety cushion in a way to say, yes, this would enhance my cash flow, but I also know even if it doesn't work, it still works the traditional way and I'm not underwater, upside down or anything like that. Now, you mentioned the picture taking and the beach shot from the balcony and stuff like that. In your opinion, is it more important to meet expectations, or is there a benefit to try to be different? And if so, why?
Yeah, I've always been a big fan of breaking the rules. I've always been since day one. And if you can break the rules in a way that's going to attract people and say, whoa, I haven't thought about it like this. Like, this is a property where I haven't seen anywhere before. And it might sure not be the best looking property, but if you can tell that story and then you write your description in a way that, yeah, it's going to be a little bit more different than what people are imagining, you're going to come out on top. I mean, there's a guy, I'll tell you, his name's Ryan Staywaz. He's in Philadelphia. And every single listing, Axel, he dresses up as a superhero, and he's like Mr. Incredible one day or Superman, and then he's like a camper, and then he's a fireman. And he does all these like skits, right? It's like Saturday Night Live, and no one's ever done that before. I've never seen someone do that. So that was different in the sense that, sure, it might be a little cheesy and it might be a little corny, but it works. And he's one of the best agents in Philadelphia now. He sells millions upon millions of dollars every single month in real estate, residential that is too. And it goes the same way with apartment buildings. If you're doing an Airbnb, you need to be a little bit more different. I'm not saying you need to dress up in a Superman costume, but you need to have that, X factor. You need to have that it factor. Is what is it going to capture people's eyes? Is it an iconic shot on the beach? Is it, taking a picture of, a steak dinner on top of, your balcony and, maybe with some cigars or a glass of wine too, and then you have like your significant other to be like, this could be you or something like that,
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I was getting at, right? Like, I don't know if it's really the correct use of the term, but in the direction kind of like a theme, like where you say, okay, well, I know we're in Puerto Rico, but I want to do like a Havana theme, right? Like with pictures of cigars and old gas station pumps and stuff like that, and those kind of things, or I want to do a tropical and everything is like mangoes and pineapples and certain types of fruit. And that is like from the bed sheets to the paintings on the pictures on the wall and the utensils that you do and all kinds of, things like that. And I feel that people who make that effort typically end up having a little bit better income because that uniqueness may not be attractive to everybody, but to those who it is attractive, they're also cherishing the effort and they're willing to give a little extra to have that experience. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And taking that personalized approach where you write, let's just say you and your wife are spending the weekend and you just have a handwritten note on a chalkboard, and then you give a list of printed out restaurants, and you're German, as am I, so you want to get some whatever. I mean, some nice German beer.
Puerto Rico in German, like bratwurst and lederhosen and stuff is maybe not so ideal, but something along those lines I can totally relate. I mean, I know, for example, one guy who transported basically the theme of tequila into his property in the Caribbean. And so by just talking about it, you can probably start conjuring the imagery, and that's how the whole place looked like. And it was for people who say, well, I want something different. I don't want to just say it looks like beachy, like everybody else has beachy or palm tree or stuff like that, right? So cool. And I wanted to bring this out because it brings it together. It's not just whether you do short-term rental. It's fundamentally you want to become clear in your mind, I think is important. What do you want to represent? And yes, as a German guy, I always say, and you would probably agree with that, you want to be above the average and however far above the average when it comes to quality. I remember one of my properties for long-term had these really cool features because it was an old property that got renovated with like this dark wood around the windows, dark wood around the doors, French door in dark wood, like beautiful hardwood floors. And the people who had originally planned to renovate it, they wanted to do the typical white and gray scheme. I said, are you crazy? This thing has so much character and you're not going to paint that just over, right?
Yeah.
So I had to pay a little extra to get a carpenter to refinish all these kind of nice wood features. But people were literally clamoring for getting the lease agreement to that property because it had character, because it was different, right? And if I had known you at that time, I would have sent somebody with from your team to take the pictures. Probably would have made $100 more on rent, right? So with that being said, we always have a few questions at the end that we like to ask each of our guests. And the one that I've always found most intriguing, and it's not a secret, we gave them to you up front, is if you had a time machine, Sean, and you could go forward or backward, where would you go and why?
So this is a great question. And it's something where I think with the constant change of the internet, I'm really always looking to see, different things in historical time. But for me, man, I've always been a huge baseball fan, and primarily, with the Philadelphia Phillies, we won the World Series in 2008. But the one thing that I was thinking of is when Babe Ruth called his shot in Wrigley Field against the Chicago Cubs in the World Series. I want to go back to that moment and just relive that, to see the, old wood and the pine tar, and just these guys would be drinking beer, smoking cigarettes right before they would go at bat. And it's just amazing. Like, they would go hit homers. Like, it's incredible. So that's one thing where I would want to say, okay, if I had a time machine, let's go back and see Babe Ruth call a shot.
Yeah, that's very cool. Actually, I have to say I did about 2 years of a project at Merck in Lansdale, not too far away, and I always had the ESPN channel on. Then you guys are brutal as fans for sports, regardless which sport, right? Like you when the season starts, everybody assumes that they can become world champions or Super Bowl winners or stuff like that. And then as the season progressed, I've been there, like I said, for 2 years, and something didn't work out. The criticism was just like cutting with a knife like every morning.
Axel, the Eagles just lost against the Cowboys.
Yeah, I didn't even want to bring it up.
by 20, and everyone's abroad. The city's like, it's ablaze right now. I don't know if you can tell, but it's on fire right now. Everyone's burning the city. But no, I'm kidding. But it's we're way too harsh, man. But I think that, when I was in Europe and Spain not too long ago, like a couple of years ago before COVID, I noticed that. As I noticed, the European fans were a little bit more respectful. They just understand it's like one long marathon of a season rather than week to week. It's like live and die. It's just,
you should actually call it tough brotherly love. It's not just brotherly love, it's very tough brotherly love. All right, Sean, it was great to have you on the show and to answer some of our questions. And I'm sure a lot of our audience members are saying, wow, Puerto Rico, that's really cool, and getting really good pictures. So if somebody says, hey, I have a property, or I'm looking into short-term rental, or I need to get somebody who's really good at taking pictures or helping me out, how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, really easy. So you just want to go to my website, SeanBoyle.com. That's SeanBoyle, SeanBoyle.com. Connect with me. I have my calendar up there. Let's get something, whether it's real estate, investing, photography. Let's connect. I can't wait.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds very good. Thank you again. And thanks for being on the show, Sean. It was really a pleasure. And I love talking about how can we visualize things so that people really get attracted to them.
Likewise, Axel. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Ideal Investor Show. More info and the links we mentioned during the show are in the show notes, or you can go to our website at idealwealthgrower.com and sign up for the Apple Podcast link. And if you like to talk to me, sign up for a strategy call. Hopefully you want to share what you learned with your network and bring more people in. We are really eager to hear your comments. And until next time, be well, stay safe, and ciao.